Now, we have to recognize, okay, we've got this astral body that comes out of the physical body. And this kid is looking down on this moment in time where he's like, pardon my cursing, but what the fuck? How am I going to get up and have breakfast tomorrow and sit at the breakfast table next to this person and act like he's my daddy? Right? It's a big thought, super big thought, right? So we have to recognize that for a person, the complexity of the trauma, it's not just one time, right? So we've got this seedling that gets stepped on, right? And it's going to work to come back up. And then it gets stepped on again and it's going to work to come back up. And pretty soon it's growing sideways or cracking and breaking apart. Yeah. So we've got these kids or these adults and their life has been completely that. Like growing sideways, you know, there's limbs that are trying to reach the sun, but it seems like that the more they get, you know, and the more it tries to grow up, then it's, you know, the weight of that is going to break it. And these people, like, they build their lives and they crumble, and they build their lives and they crumble, right? And that is why time is in a very precarious situation. Right.
You know, the question that comes to my mind in a time loop, you know, where the child is experiencing this abuse over and over and over and over again, can they stuff memories into one time loop, or is it always a new time loop?
There are cycles and there are clusters, right? Now, often, if we find, if we're, you know, being crafty and, you know, that high-tech surgeon, and we find that one moment, we can disarm the whole cycle.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if there was a rapid way to
Absolutely.
disarm it.
Absolutely. Like I said, there are times, like, and the more I do it, the less I jump people, right? Because going in for those prime moments can change everything.
So it's all in about the consultation prior to doing the jumping. You know, you want to identify the most loaded
I like
points.
to hear people, I like to hear people talk, right? The first few sessions, right? I'm going to want to hear repetitive words. I'm going to want to hear repetitive phrases. I'm going to want to hear how their stories are going together, right? Now, if they're in the middle of telling a story and I can feel the emotion and their body and they get triggered, I'm going to take care of it right then. Right? Because they are triggered. Those are the easiest moments to deal with. Right? So if somebody is saying they're telling your story and they're getting all like this, and tears are crying, right? You're like, close your eyes. How old do you feel right now? I feel like I'm 3 years old. Well, where do you see that 3-year-old? Right? And, you know, we start tapering out, but the further back we can get, the less we have to jump. Right now, there are times, like as I'm working with someone, where I am recognizing like something like, say, sexual trauma that was repeated throughout time, right? I may hit like a 3-year-old and say, okay, I'm seeing a 15-year-old that's waving their arms at us. Let's go get her, right? Okay, I see an 18-year-old. She's waving too. Let's go get her, right? And we bring them all home at once. And then the cycle is clean.
Okay.
So how do you know that at that point that you go get like the 18-year-old and like all the other ages?
Well, I would think that I mean, for myself, I can often see them. And right? If somebody's talking about sexual trauma, they're going to be like highlighting events, right? So they're like, yeah, when I was 18, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, well, is that the first time that ever happened to you? No, it happened. Normally they're going to do what is the closest to them today is going to be where they start, right? And then the more you dig, especially around sexual trauma, right? The more you dig, you'll be like, so, right, did anything happen when you were a child? Yeah. You know, and then if I'm seeing clear pictures, I jump. If there is not a clear picture, I'm not going to jump, right? Because if they don't have a clear picture for me to tap into, it's only emotion. There is a difference, right? Those PTS loops, right, are there because of those fragments, and they're a tangle in time. That's different than just an emotional response, right? When people have had emotional abuse, you don't jump on that often. That's different, right? That's about like creating a different pathway, right? But when we choose to jump, it's knowing that there are fragments trapped there.
Yeah, and like you had done that before, or I don't know whether you talked about it or whether it was in the video, where at the end she said, I can't I can't come back right now because there's another part of me that
That
was
wants to
3
come
years old.
home.
She went, yeah, that wanted to, it was a playhouse or something like that. It was about a playhouse. Yeah.
I can't remember, but that happens quite often. And
You
she'll be
brought
like,
back 3 fragments and you went back for one and then 2 others presented themselves. So you melded together the 3 fragments and did the spinning you did the spinning twice.
yeah. Sometimes I don't have to do the spinning twice. If I spin the first time, then, it's because I'm not seeing more, right?
Yeah.
And, often if there's a cycle, I'll be saying, are there any others that you see? Right? And often, especially at the beginning, we really use these earlier fragments to help us find the others. So first few jumps, we're like, listen, we're coming to gather up everyone. I'm super fucking sorry I left you here. I'm so sorry I left you here. And I'm so grateful for you for fighting that battle for me. Right? And I would be so honored if you chose to come back with me and help me find everyone else.
Yeah.
Right?
So when you are in the jump and you're talking to a person or like whatever, a 15-year-old, you can ask them you can ask the 15-year-old if there are any more?
Yeah, just be like, no, I usually ask the adult, I'll say, look around, are there any that you can see that are poking their heads out? Now, this is if there's a cycle, right? This is huge trauma. So if like Brooke, right, had all these things happening, she was drugged, she was this, she was that, like we're all happening, right? And they were happening, pretty much daily or weekly, right? So time, if you loop it up, right, is pretty tangled up, right? So as much as we can get out of that cluster, the better. Yeah.
So my this person I'm working with, I guess something that repeatedly occurred was his brother hold his, like, pretty much held his nose and mouth so he would pass out, and he would keep passing out.
Okay, so he passed out today.
Well, I mean, he didn't pass out, he just
No,
blacked
but
out.
I understand, but that's what happened
So
energetically, right?
yeah,
So you go back to the very beginning.
so my question to you is, if I were to jump in a situation like that, which clearly has a lot of cycles, I would say, can you look around and see
Not a
any?
lot of cycles, it's one cycle, but a lot of loops.
So wait,
If the brother keeps holding his nose and holding his mouth and making him pass out,
yeah,
that's one cycle.
okay.
Right?
And the loop,
That's what you're looking for, the cycle of trauma caused by that. Yeah. And the responses caused by that. And throughout all of his 5 systems. Right? Did he feel like he was going to die? Like, that would be the first thought I had. Right? Was he afraid that he was going to die? I would say that his fear today would imply that he had a fear that he was going to die. Like his brother wasn't going to know when to stop. Right? That's how you have to start thinking.
yeah. But so I guess, like, I'm like, you know what, the scooping up all the different fragments, maybe I should wait on that. It's
Right now, this man, you should not be jumping him. Like you've got some other work to do first.
I know I have to build the trust. I
You have to build
really,
trust. You have to hear some of his story. You have to get him anchored, get him doing the exercises, get him understanding what's going on before you do surgery. Yeah.
yep.
Now, Ayurveda claims that, right, our chakras develop in 7-year increments, right? So that means that our default programming is in place by the age of 7. Science says by the age of 5. So most of our work, right, is done in these lower chakras, right? Most of our yeah, that's where you're going to find the nuggets, right? Is down in these lower chakras. So we have to understand that, for a child growing up in a home like that, right? Family hurts, relationship hurts, holidays are scary, dinner time sucks, food is very scary, sleep is hard, right? Do you hear those words? Right? Like those words, love, what the fuck is that? Like, I don't even know what that means, right? If somebody says they love you while they're punching you in the head, what does that mean, right? So we have to recognize that many of these words are even programmed wrong. So when we're in there, right, we're really speaking to what that child believes and is heard to be true about themselves and about each other and about the world and about the circumstance, right? Sexual trauma is perfect to talk about like this because that child, say you've got a 5-year-old child and daddy is sneaking into her room at night. We have to understand that as the wife of a husband who is cheating on them, they are going to know that. The wife is going to know that. So do you think she doesn't know that her husband is in her daughter's bedroom? I don't believe it. I don't believe a woman is going to get out on the other side of that and say, I truly didn't know. right? You know, there had to be something, right? And you have to understand then, oftentimes the mom then starts treating the child differently because she's the other woman, right? And mom starts being mean to the child or ignoring the situation. And suddenly this child of 5 years old is dealing, right, and maneuvering the complexity of being the other woman to her mother and father and not even getting to go home. At least the real other woman can go to her house and have some peace. This child has nowhere to go with that. No, that is just the complexity of the triangle. Then we have to think about all the secrets and the grooming and, right, the touching and how that affects absolutely everything that child encounters from that moment forward is a skill, right? How are you going to have a relationship when you've already been the other one, right? It's when a child then from this sexual trauma comes up into puberty, often they're either super promiscuous like Brooke and insatiable, right? Because every ounce of attention, every self is identified with how much you want it, right? Or, right, they're in complete horror over the idea of sex, yeah. Now, it's interesting that this integrity word has been in this program like for years now, but it's true, right? The integrity of that tree is off, yeah. And, you know, without awareness, that's going to break off, right? So we have to be aware of that. As we're pulling them into integrity. Now, I like to think about time, right? Time and a trajectory of choice and thought, right? So a person in trajectory has a taproot, right? That through time, through thought, through word, and through action, that is trustworthy and sustainable, right? Now, a person that's fragmented, right? They're like a bush. There's no taproot. There's no inner core string because there's all these little tiny tendrils that are coming off that can't hold any weight and are not trustworthy. Does that make sense?
Yes. So integrity, can you list those parts of the integrity, like integrity through thought, through action, through
word? Now that's the way we can identify it out front, right? But for a person, as they're developing that in their core, it becomes an inner strength, right? Often people come in the very beginning and like their pain tolerance is zilch, right? Everything hurts. They're so sensitive to everything, that everything is catastrophic, right? That is that bush, right? That's the bush. When they can have that inner core strength, right? Then you start having some resilience, right? There's no resilience. There's very little resilience in this tree, right? It's trying. The bush, good strong wind, right? So we have to recognize that. Now, as we're pulling time and getting these loops out of time, we're pulling these tendril timelines into the core, creating that taproot, right? So that that person can begin to trust themselves and become trustworthy for others. Yeah, does that make sense? So science says that every 90 seconds we are offered a handful of choices, right? And each one of those choices comes with a tendril timeline, right? So you see a person whose life's going on like this, and all of a sudden it's going, they decided to jump all on board one of those tendril timelines, right? Now, what happens for a person who has PTSD, they've got tons of these tendril timelines, they jump all in and it breaks off. The limb breaks off. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You mean that it breaks off?
These people like start businesses, they crumble. They have relationships, they crumble. They like, you know, I had one client that started probably 5 or 6 amazing businesses, and then they would crumble, right? Because she didn't have sustenance to keep anything going. Everything for her was about starting things, right? And then one of those timelines, it's kind of like, you know, I mean, you probably know Shirley, right? You build things and you have great ideas and you put it all, and then it flops, and you try something else and it flops, and you try something else.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that partly, now this is the many different levels, the 5 different levels. Part of that is not being able to go from left and right brain. Right? Part of it is taking taking this random choice and making it our lives. People do that with marriages all the time. Right? Oh, I feel happy right now. I'm going to make this the rest of my life, and they don't even know the person, right? That happens. And then that crumbles and, you know, the limb breaks off. Right? So we've got this little dude, right? He's risen up out of the body. He looks down and he sees himself in this horrible situation. And the amazing little dude goes, oh my God, I need to encapsulate that. I need to encapsulate that so that I can get up and have breakfast with this person tomorrow. Right? Now, we know that people in trauma that have had trauma have amnesia. We know that. That's these loops. Many of times they've been hidden, and it's happened so many times that they don't even know that they're trapped there. Right? And those are the ones that once you get the top skinned off, right, all the things they know, right? And then you can come in and find the ones that really have thought, right, that they can't remember. Memory recovery happens here every day, right? Now, Einstein says that with a force strong enough, we can cause time to fold back in upon itself, creating a loop. Call it bending time, right? Yeah, Einstein's general theory of relativity allows for the possibility of warping time to such a high degree that it actually folds upon itself, resulting in a time loop. Einstein said that years ago, right? So we know that's possible, right? So when we can recognize that this kid was so freaking brilliant that he was able to encapsulate that horrible moment and move it out of the way so he could continue living, right? Now, as a child, I was having people asking me what was happening, right? And, you know, I don't know, I was a curious kid, right? So I was like, okay, I need to figure out, like, people are asking me what is happening to me, and I can say horrible things are happening to me, but I can't say what they are, right? How crazy do you feel then? And you're a kid of like 12, right?
Were you too scared, Cherie? Is that what it was?
It's amnesia, honey. That's what I'm
It was
talking
the
about.
amnesia.
It's
Okay.
amnesia. So there is a haunting and there's awareness that bad things are happening, right? Just like a person that wakes up from a coma and looks around and they're like, wait, that amnesia causes a separation on many different levels, right?